Good morning, everyone, and happy December. Man, how did we get to December? I have no clue. But it is a whopping 18 degrees here in East Tennessee. So we're all bundled up and excited for our live today. So Lexi and I, sorry guys, I'm trying to mess with my microphone. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Lexi and I just got off a very cool speaking opportunity. We were a part of a panel for the East Tennessee Purchasing Association group where they wanted to chat with us about how to receive better RFP responses. So we thought, what a better time than to go live right after and talk about some of the things that we were asked, because it was a really engaging conversation. I learned a lot, Lexi learned a lot, and these guys asked really good questions. And what was so encouraging to me is that they really do, procurement really does care about getting quality responses. It's just sometimes they don't think like we do, right? So it was very, very eye-opening for me. But if you're joining us today, please comment. Let me pull my chat box up here. Please comment and let us know your favorite Christmas movie. I am so in the Christmas spirit. My Christmas tree is up. I am ready for the holiday season. So let us know what your favorite Christmas movie is. If you're joining us for the first time, Avero Advisors is an independent third-party consulting firm. We specialize in ERP consulting, technology, strategic planning, business process re-engineering, and we also just launched a new offering in AI consulting, specifically in the local government space. So happy to have you on our live today. And we're going to dive right in. Real quick, I know you guys know who Lexi is, but I'm going to let her introduce herself again. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Lexi, and why you're passionate about the work you do for Avero.
Yeah. So I'm Lexi Webster. I'm the proposal coordinator at Avero. I coordinate the whole proposal process from finding RFPs, drafting those, responding to those, and handling the submission. I'm also in the business development department with Megan and do a lot of marketing initiatives like this, the live, and make content and lots of other things in the business development department. And I'm just very passionate about RFPs and making those more attractive to suppliers like us. And also, we make RFPs for entities when they're going out to bid for software systems. So, kind of best practices on both ends that we have learned and how to hopefully make that process easier for you all.
Yes, and we do have several YouTube videos on our YouTube channel. I do want to reference those. We do have those out there about how to get better RFP responses. We do have a video where we're pretty passionate about our pet peeves about RFPs. So make sure you check that one out. We're not mad. We're not upset. We're just very passionate about the RFP response. We respond to over 150 RFPs every year. So we know what to look for, and we know obviously what we're looking for. And because of that, we've become more selective about which opportunities we go after. So some of the things we're going to talk about today are those things that hinder us from going after a solicitation or a response. So again, I want to draw your attention to our YouTube channel, and then our 2025 report is in my upper left-hand corner. So please make sure you not sign it, but download it. Scan that code and download our 2025 report. It talks about all things digital transformation in the local sector. So with that being said, Lexi, let's dive into it. So it was a Q&A format, this panel. And again, it was for the East Tennessee Purchasing Association. And the very first question that we were posed was, what kind of effect do time limits have on the RFPs that you go after? So Lexi, do you want to dive into that?
Yeah. So I will say Avero is a small company. It's just Megan and I in the business development department, really. And, timelines really affect what we can respond to. If you have even a week timeline, sometimes depends, our current workloads and stuff, but that can be too short. 2 weeks is the minimum ideal for me. If you have a lot of requirements like subcontractor requirements, and I'm going to have to find subcontractors and reach out to a bunch of companies and conduct calls with them, a month would be nice, honestly. So it kind of depends on your scope of work, obviously, what your timeline will be. But for our industry, I would say 2 weeks is a minimum. And there have been times where we have 7 to 10 RFPs due a week, and something has got to go. Timelines matter and where we're at in the process. I also do RFP search every Friday. I've literally saw before where one is posted that Friday morning and it's due 3 days later on Monday. That's not worth my energy to look at. They probably know who they want, and the proposal has been baked for a while. And it looks like it's pointed toward a certain vendor. So, we can't work all weekend and turn something around in 2-3 days. And we really need some time and want to learn about your organization and not just turn in a cookie cutter proposal. We really want to dig in and make it unique to your organization, and that requires some time.
It does. It does. And I do want to reiterate, this is very industry specific.
Yes.
Right. I mean, we have longer turnaround times because we are building out an RFP for consulting work that we're literally guessing on what you need based on, your scope of work. So we need time to be able to craft a very unique response to what your needs are and what we think your needs are based on the scope. So there are a lot of things that play into turnaround time, right? As Lexi mentioned, the MBE, DBE requirements, if we're going to have to go out and search for a partner or subcontractor, we're going to need at least 2 weeks to do that alone, right? At least because we don't have a lot of connections in some states with our MBE, DBE, women-owned business partners in certain states. So, we're going to have to go out and find who can do this work, right? And who would be a good partner for us to complete this work. So it really does just depend. There was a participant that raised a good question or comment rather. She said, a lot of times when I put, a month, when I put an RFP out for a month, people just put it on the back burner and they don't respond. And we were like, well, if we told our boss we were going to put something on the back burner, he would absolutely terminate us on the spot after we said that. So we really want to do the work that we select, right? If we select an RFP to go after, we really want that business. That's the bottom line. We're not going to put anything on a back burner. And we do have a very strict process of responding to an RFP. So Lexi, do you want to talk a little bit to that? I know that was kind of a very unique comment, like, some people put it on the back burner if I have the RFP out on the street for too long. What were your thoughts on that?
I would also like to say, not pinpointing any specific project management tool vendors or anything, but we do use project management tools to keep up with, what is in our, what we call hopper for RFPs. I know some entities don't use them and they may have projects written up on a whiteboard in listed order or something. But I would like to say at Avero, we do use that. And as soon as we find one that we're interested in, it gets added to the hopper. Yes, depending on time, and workloads, we may not touch it for 2 weeks if it's due in a month. It depends on what we're working on, but it will not be put on the back burner and forgotten about. We will definitely get to it and spend adequate time with it. And for us, I always feel like the longer the better. Now, some of these, especially what we call IDIQ contracts that, you get your name on a vendor list and then they issue task orders later on. Some of those, we saw those before, Megan, that are out for 6 to 12 months. They put them out and they are not due till the following year. So those we still add to the hopper and we still monitor those. We still check for Q&A, addenda, everything. So nothing really gets put on the back burner for us. And we do.
There is no back burner.
Yes, we do pay attention to everything. And, if we're interested in doing business with you, we will showcase that and not forget about you.
We take it very, very seriously. We do not put anything on the back burner. But as Lexi mentioned, there is a process and there is a very strict QA process. So we're not just crafting these and then immediately shipping them out the door. It goes through a QA before it even comes to me. And then I do a final QA and then we ship it out the door. Unless corrections are needed to be made. So anyway, there's no back burner at Avero. I just want to make that very clear. But that was so interesting because maybe in other industries, maybe that is true. I can think, my significant other, he sells aggregate materials for construction. And I could see where, in a month's time, he might put that on the back burner and forget about it, because he's bidding on, there's so much work to be had in construction right now, especially in this area. There are plenty others he could go after. Right. So I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting comment. I'm going to the comments. Kyler. Hey, Kyler. Thank you for joining us today. So Lexi Webster, what is a reasonable time for Vero advisors, but also for other vendors in terms of keeping your RFP out on the market?
Yeah, I would say a Vero, at least a 2 week to a month time frame is great for us to respond. But when we're also making RFPs for our clients for software vendors, I think we typically leave those open for a month, perhaps. And it depends on the organization, of course.
60 to 90 days for software.
Yes. Yeah, depends on the organization, of course. And luckily, we have contacts in the industry where we're not going to let people forget about it and put it on their back burner. We are going to make sure you get responses and that you have good competition and everything. So 60 to 90 days for software vendors, and we will make sure that does not get put on a back burner.
Yes, absolutely. I think a month turnaround time is ideal, because one of the things I brought up, yes, for consulting services, one of the things I brought up is I said, quite frankly, we have about 7 RFPs that we're working on in a week. Right? So, we're not just working on one. So we have to manage those others and those other due dates. And sometimes we have to come to the table and say, hey, we're not going to make this deadline because there are too many requirements. It's a physical submission. We've got to print 75 copies. It's just not worth our time. There are these other 6 over here that, have easier requirements, and we have a better chance at going after it. Okay. Kyler says, that's a really interesting perspective. I feel like that behavior shows you exactly how that partner will show up for your project. If they can't prioritize an RFP, then they certainly can't prioritize or organize the digital transformation effort. And I agree with that. Yes. I agree with that. I did not, I about fell out of my chair when she said back burner. And then I think AB, our boss, was the first one to comment. So,
there is no back burner.
There's no back burner. So hashtag no back burners at Vero. All right. So the next question we were prompted with was how important is it to put together a specific, very detailed RFP package, and with a well-defined scope, a well-defined timeline? Are you going to have a pre-bid meeting or not? Is it mandatory? Is it not? How important is it to have a very detailed and put together RFP package?
That is probably most important. We really struggle when we find an RFP that we think could possibly be something we're interested in, and you've not really got your scope of work nailed down. That needs to really be priority 1 before you even consider going out to RFP, and be detailed. Sometimes we see an 80-page solicitation document, but the scope of work is only half a page. The scope of work is the most important part by far in the RFP solicitation. And it needs to be detailed. It needs to provide some background. It needs to tell us exactly what your outcomes, what you want to result from this project, and what you're looking for in a vendor, a consultant, what your needs are, things like that. So I think that's extremely important. And we've talked about this before, Megan. A lot of that can be avoided if entities, get in a room, talk about what they want, all write the RFP together, and realize what their success metrics are. Not just, an IT manager, for example, putting the RFP together and putting it out on the street. And, it really needs input from everyone at the executive level.
That's right. It goes back to executive alignment in terms of creating an efficient and very detailed scope. You really do need to get in a room, and IT can own the project, right? If you want it to be owned by IT, but really everyone at the executive level should be on the same page. Just because the project is for digital transformation doesn't mean that the technology department writes the scope.
Yes.
Because why they understand, technology, right? They understand integration. They understand the software piece itself, but what they don't have a good understanding of is government operations. And so that's where you need everyone to come together and say, make a wish list, start there.
Yeah.
This is what I want from this project. I want my staff to be able to operate more efficiently. I want there to be less paper. I want my purchase orders to not have to be physically walked to, from desk to desk. Identify what you want those outcomes to be, as Lexi mentioned, and just know that just because it's digital transformation doesn't mean that it lives in the technology department and they're the only ones that can write out the scope of work. It really should be visioning from that executive level from all departments, because it's going to touch every single department in your organization. One of the other things that a gentleman brought up who I think he was the president or vice president of the NIGP group. And he said, one of the things I recommend our agencies do is, solicit an RFI just to gather information on what you might need from this RFP, get feedback from the RFI, get feedback from your vendors before you really put the actual solicitation out on the street. And I thought that was great advice.
Yes.
We go after RFIs all the time, and it allows us to say, hey, you might want to think about these 10 to 15 things when you're actually soliciting for the real project.
Yes, for sure. RFIs are really helpful, especially when they say, here's our draft RFP document. Are we missing anything? What should we add? Things like that. Really lets vendors know too that you're wanting this to be a very collaborative process and you're wanting your RFP to be the best it can be. You're making sure you're covering all bases.
Yes, and that conversation led into, well, if you're not going to do an RFI, at least have an open period to where we can ask you questions, right?
Yes.
If we ask you questions, don't refer us back to the RFP, right?
Yes.
So either a Q&A format on your portal or via email, or have a pre-bid meeting. That's actually beneficial, again, to where we can have an open conversation about what you're really looking for, right? And you answer us in terms of what you are looking for in terms of outcomes, and not refer back to section 5.1 in the RFP. Because we have attended a lot of pre-bid meetings, and Lexi can attest to this, where someone will ask a question and they'll be like, well, we listed it here. And it's like, well, we know you listed it there, but it wasn't in terms that we understand. So we need further clarification on that. And still they tell us to reference the RFP. So what is the point?
It needs to be a productive pre-bid with open conversation. Yeah,
exactly. And then a lot of times, us vendors, we all have the same questions, right? So it's very eye-opening to see as an addendum, right? The Q&A document, question and answer. It gives us further background into the project. Let's talk about background a little bit. I know this is something that we harp on. It's very important for us to know where you've been and where you're looking to go. Meaning, if this is for a technology strategic plan, we'd like to know, like, what systems are you using? How outdated are they? How many end users do you have? How many departments is this project going to affect? Lexi, do you have thoughts on providing a clear background on the organization within the RFP?
Yeah, it really just helps us know where you're currently at and where you want to go. And also, why is this project happening now? What current problems are you facing? And what would you like the result to be after the project? Really helps us understand where you're at and why the project matters, why it's important, and why is it happening now. That is something not many entities put in their RFPs. It's almost like a guessing game sometimes. Why are they doing this project? Well, I don't really know. Let's go conduct a bunch of research on the entity.
Yeah.
It's really nice when you let us know from your perspective why this project is happening, why it matters, and what current issues you're facing that you're looking to solve with this project.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see. What was it? So that conversation went on for a while about what,
Yes.
how detailed, how put together does your RFP package need to be. One comment, I think, that Terry McKee, shout out to you. Thank you for having us on your panel. We really enjoyed it.
Yes.
Terry has been a huge advocate for Avero and an important piece of our journey. So thank you, Terry McKee, for having us on. AV just chimed in. AV, do you want to comment on how there's no back burner at Avero? I don't know if you heard us talk about that, but if you want to hop in the comments about the back burner, let us know. But AV says RFI equals request for information, involves ensuring clarity, focus, and completeness while keeping it concise and structured for ease of response. Yes, thank you for that clarification. So back to Terry McKee, he asked us about, the page limit, right? So sometimes there are, I don't know, 95 to 105 page RFP documents out there. And he said, how does that hinder you guys from responding? Yeah. So Lexi, take that and I'll add my thoughts.
Those are very overwhelming. I've even saw some over 100 pages before. A lot of those are required forms or their sample contract that they're just showing you that you don't have to do anything with until you're awarded. But it is very overwhelming. And a lot of times we're just going to put, search and find and look at the scope of work. I think a lot of entities, there's two extreme sides of this. Sometimes it's a 3-page RFP. Sometimes it's 103 pages. Somewhere in between is helpful. I would say 20 to 50 pages, something like that. Obviously I understand entities have required forms and that adds to the page count and everything. But it is very overwhelming when you're looking at a 100-page document, and it seems like a lot of it is administrative burden and not a ton about the actual project.
Yeah, I would agree. And some of that is state law, right? I mean, we know you have to have some of those pages in there, but maybe making it easier to navigate would be helpful too, because we download some RFPs that don't even have a table of contents, and if they do, you're still having to search for the page number. Some of them, we can click on them and go directly to the scope. We've read through enough of these now. We know what to look for to be able to decide if we want to go after it or not, or if we want to, attend the pre-bid and ask more questions and gain more clarity on it. But the more concise, the better for us. As concise. I say concise. If you're being concise, make sure that you're getting, you're being detailed enough.
Yes.
To notate your outcomes, right? There's a happy medium there, because we're saying, be detailed in your scope, but be concise in your page number. You can get out what you want to say in terms of outcomes in your scope of work. I love the scopes that are actually an outline, right? Like, okay, in phase one, here's what we want, and here are the deliverables we think we want. But if you have other suggestions, please put it, in your phase one methodology. I love the ones that are built out like that.
Yes.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm going to the comments. We need an RFP glossary for the full industry. Yes, I agree, Kyler. That is a very thoughtful idea. Very good idea. I'm going back to our questions here. This was a good one that we were asked. What impact do federal requirements have on your ability to respond to solicitations? This one opened up a huge can of worms. And I'm pretty sure we spent, 45 minutes on this question alone. Because for us, MBE, we are an MBE and a DBE certified organization in most states across the country, but they still, some RFPs still require us to go out and get a veteran-owned partner and a woman-owned partner, and then also an LGBTQ partner. And it really varies by state and sometimes by county or city. But we are still required to give a percentage of our work to those agencies. And I think it's a great idea, and I understand the reasoning behind it. But sometimes we can't even use our own MBE or DBE. They say, no, you can't use it. You got to go find someone else. And so the problem with that, it goes back to this turnaround time. right? So we mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
If we have to reach out to, multiple vendors to satisfy these requirements, we need at least 2 weeks to do that. Because we're having to go out to websites and do our own research on each of these entities, because we do not want to propose someone on our project that doesn't do good work or good quality work, or work that, that's not up to the quality of Avero advisors. We have been there. We proposed a minority-owned business on a project recently, and when we get to the shortlist interview, they completely tank, and it's a bad look. So, as AV did mention that, we could probably do a better job on building relationships with those minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses on the front end. But it's hard when you do business across the country and you're a team of two, right?
Yeah.
So maybe shout out if you are a minority-owned or women-owned business working in the government consulting space around digital transformation projects, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
Let us know.
Let us know. That's going to be a goal for 2025.
And I'd also like to
say, go ahead, Lex. Sorry.
I'd also like to say, I know it's a good goal. A lot of times entities are having to do these requirements to check a box, state law, things like that. But I'd also like to say, if you really want to be thoughtful about it and get quality subs and help us out, because it is very time consuming. And we do work across the country. We don't know all these small businesses and such, across the country. If you really want to help the process, I do not like when I say, is there an interested list of subcontractors, anything like that? And they send me the whole state directory. Do you know how many are in the whole state directory? Tens of thousands. Yeah.
Yes.
So then I'm having to go through that and conduct my own research and try to find firms that do what we do, would be up to standard. It's really nice. I've not saw this happen much, but sometimes, occasionally at a pre-bid, at the end, they will have subcontractor and prime, networking. And at the end of that pre-bid, they'll send out a list of, hey, here were 25 subcontractors that are interested in the project. Here are their certifications. Please contact them. That makes it a lot easier than doing blind outreach to companies that, one, their classification may match ours, but they don't actually do what we do. And I don't, you can't tell that from their website. You're not knowing that on the front end. Or two, they're just simply not interested in the project right now. They may be could be a great partner, but they've just got too much going on. It's a small company, 1 or 2 people. They don't have the time at the moment. So it's really nice, if you want to go the extra mile as procurement and make this a worthwhile partnership, and where it's not just to check a box, have a pre-bid. Say, okay, let's have some networking. Here's the subs that showed up that are interested in working with a prime on this, and this is their certification. That really helps narrow it down to ones who are actually truly interested in this project.
That's right. You can help us out by just narrowing down your list, even, and making sure that the commodity codes of the entities that you are showcasing on your site or on your spreadsheet are correct. Because as Lexi said, we could call 10 and they may not be offering the same services that we are, but their commodity codes are the same. So Kyler says, big question, maybe more generally, where should you showcase your unique industry compliance requirements? Are you talking about within the RFP? I guess I don't really understand the question. Lexi, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly which side either this question is going to. I'm curious if it's like from a vendor perspective, like for us responding, or RFP.
Yeah. Kyler, can you clarify that? And we'll be happy to answer it. I do have some thoughts in terms of what we just said, on making sure that it's easier to research for us, because the research piece takes a lot of time. So maybe on your website where you have your MBEs and WBEs listed, you could be a little bit more detailed about. She said yes in the RFP. Lexi, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, in the RFP, I will say sometimes it's, even if they have table of contents and headings, it's very difficult. I always do like a search and find just because sometimes these small business requirements, like Megan said, WB, LGBTQ, they're just in kind of a random paragraph in the scope of work near the bottom. And
That's
it's
a
not
lot.
very clear where to find them exactly. You would truly have to, skim every paragraph. I really like it when they make a heading and they put that in the table of contents, like,
MBE requirements.
Yeah, WB requirements, whatever, whatever they're looking for. Make that a full section itself. It doesn't really matter where in the RFP, but just make that clear, because a lot of times I just see them randomly inserted in a paragraph in the scope, and that's very hard to find.
That is very true. And typically it's in 15.8, and then it's very tiny on MBE requirements. And you're like, whoa, okay, to the blind eye, I would have missed that if I didn't know how to, control F and search the entire document, it would have been missed. And that has happened before early on with me. So it's easy to do. I like a very like a summary page. We talked about this on the panel as well within the RFP document. You have your title page, but then you have like this summary page where it says, okay, here's when we release this RFP, here's when it's due, here's the mandatory or non-mandatory pre-bid meeting, here's the link where you can join on Zoom, so it's not email to us and go to spam. And then here are our requirements, and here's a list of the required forms. Just a summary page, because then that becomes a checklist for us, right? Okay, we have this. We have seen an RFP actually that gave us a checklist.
And that's very helpful too with required forms. If you're gonna have us submit 10 to 20 required forms, a checklist would be very nice, because sometimes we look at these and I say, okay, I think this is a sample contract. We don't do anything at the time with it. And it can actually be an NDA that we need to sign right now. Some of those things are not very clear, especially, we're not legal experts and things like that with contracts. So making a checklist is extremely helpful. Tell me exactly which documents need turned back in, and let me know, okay, this is an exhibit. You just look at it, nothing to do with it. That is very, very helpful.
Or if I need to sign versus I don't need to sign, it doesn't pertain to us. Do I still have to sign it? Yes, that would be very beneficial. Also, recently we've seen that we have to become a certified small business in the state, that we are proposing in. And really our state license in the state of Tennessee should be reciprocal, right? So that's been a headache for us too. Just a small note, because we're only responding, right? Maybe if we get the business, we will then become certified, obviously, in that state. But those things cost money. And if we're not even going to be selected, there really is no point. So we've ran into that a lot. What else on MBE? What else came up in regards to that conversation? The meet and greet was a big one.
Yes, meet and greets, networking opportunities, things like that. That's helpful. I've attended some of those the entities have put on. Having a Zoom option is great. Going in person is obviously preferred, but sometimes these are across the country in California. And it would be very hard for us, obviously, just to send somebody for a meet and greet and spend thousands of dollars.
That's right.
But it's very, very good to get our name on a list. The entity that coordinated the meet and greet, they're like, so what does your company do? Okay, we'll put you on a list. If we're ever looking for this, or a prime contractor is looking for this, we will know y'all are certified in these areas and this is what you do, and we'll keep you on a list. So those things are really helpful, especially for entities that are having to deal with a lot of state laws about having these MBE contractors and everything. That is a way to make it easier and make it more open, and having those, companies that are interested on standby.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest takeaway here is just to categorize those subs and make it more easy for us to be able to reach out, and also give us time in your deadline to make sure that we can satisfy all of those requirements, because it does put a lot of pressure on us. And your smaller firms, your more boutique firms like Avero, We're a two-person team, and sometimes we don't have the bandwidth of a bigger firm.
Mhm.
So you might not, get a response from any unique firms like Avero if you don't have the allotted time baked into your turnaround. So, so Kyler raises a big question that you and I have been talking about for a while, and we might need more time. We might need to do a whole nother live on this, Kyler. Thank you. AI, hot topic right now. It's a very, very hot topic across the country, but specifically in local government because of the compliance issues, right? And so Kyler asks, what about AI, guys? How do you know if your RFP response is from a human or from a machine? This is a touchy subject because everyone is using some type of chatbot, you know. And we didn't get to it today on our panel, but I'd love to have Terry McKee maybe back on. Terry, if you're watching, I'd love to have your thoughts on how do you know if AI is crafting your RFP. I can tell you that AI is probably 85% of your RFP responses AI is generating. With this caveat, AI does have to have help, meaning if you say, hey, AI, craft me a response for business process redesign for HR, it will spit out a scope of work or a response to a scope. But a lot of times it's not correct, right? So you still need that human interaction to be able to decipher what's correct and what's not, and what really makes sense and what doesn't. So if you are reading through a response as a procurement representative and it sounds like a robot, right? It doesn't sound like any human interaction. AI is pretty easy to tell in text, in my opinion. But if you're reading it and it sounds like a robot and it sounds like someone just copy and pasted it, it's pretty prominent, in my opinion. And you can copy and paste it into Chat GPT yourself and say, hey, did you write this? Yes or no, because we do it a lot. We do it a lot. We use that feature a lot. Lexi, do you have thoughts? I could go on and on about this.
I think we're seeing a shift in the industry we work with. Shortlist presentations have become more common. That could be for a variety of reasons, but one reason could be because everyone's response is pretty similar across the board, and they want to know what makes you, what makes your firm unique, and why they should go with you, not just reading the same AI response from 10 firms. I think AV and I talked about this on LinkedIn in a post Kyler had tagged us on a few weeks ago. AI can do a lot. It can, but also it doesn't showcase why your firm is unique. It does not know your firm well enough at this point. Of course, the more you use it, the more it can understand it, all that. But it really does take the human touch to say, okay, sure, we can say we do this. Everyone can say they do it and write an AI scope of work. But what makes us unique and special, and how can we actually showcase we have good experience in this and are the right fit? AI can't accomplish that yet.
No, it cannot. What advice do you have for procurement specialists who may be reading through some of these responses and they're questioning, like, hey, did AI write this? Did a human write this? What would you give? What advice would you give?
I really would, like you said, Megan, plug this into a chatbot yourself and call out, what parts are AI, what isn't. AI, it all is about what you input. So it may not get it 100% correct 100% of the time, but it can let you know, okay, this was a canned response versus this is what actually, they came up with as a company.
Right. And I think, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. You're going.
Back to your and AV's conversation on LinkedIn. AI does not know your brand. AI does not know your organization. And typically the messaging should be the same, right? So our RFP responses matches our brand. It matches our tone. And, you can tell that we wrote it. If there is another entity, typically you can tell based on what they're posting, if they're posting anything, or based on their website, does the brand match? Is this
Yeah.
text, does it align well?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And I just go back to, you can always tell if it's AI
Yes, you
generated or
can.
not.
You can.
You always can. You
Mhm.
know, even in emails, you know, sometimes Lexi emails me and I'm like, ChatGPT wrote this. I know this, you know, like you need to
A
change it.
word
Maybe,
we would not use.
no,
Yeah.
not being guilty of the same thing, because it
Mhm.
does. It takes the personality out of it. And so
Yeah.
a lot of people can rely on AI or Chat GPT to write everything. So I
Mhm.
think you are going to see more of this
Yes.
in your RFP responses. But I agree, you know, you should want to, if you are deploying a digital transformation project that's in the upwards of millions of dollars
Million.
that you are going to be spending for your city or county, you need to meet with the people
Yes.
you are going to be working with for the
Yep.
next 3 to 5 years, and not on Zoom either.
Yep.
We can do another. I'm about to get real passionate here. We've been shortlisted several times
Mhm.
in the past, and we're not allowed to come meet you in person. So
Mhm.
this actually did come up on our panel conversation,
Yeah.
you know, but you need to meet with the people that
Yep.
you're going to be doing business with,
Mhm.
because they need to be your partner and they need to care
Yep.
about you as an organization and what you're trying to achieve as a whole.
Yep.
So
And
on
it's a big
AI,
investment.
go ahead.
And I'd
Sorry.
just like to say, like, you know, some of these huge firms may have very flashy sales teams that can do
Yeah,
the presentation awesome on Zoom, but are those the people you're going to be working with after you award them? No, a lot of times it's not. Those people go away, and you may have
they
people
disappear.
you don't like at all. And that is why I think we're seeing, you know, project manager needs to come to the short list, things like that. I think that's important. And you really need to get to know them personally, not just through Zoom. You're not getting the true experience and feel of who they are.
No, you're not. You're not. And Kyler, I was just about to bring this up. She
Mhm.
says, what about the other way around, using AI to vet RFP responses? I think that that would make the lives of our procurement
Yeah.
specialists a lot easier, so that you guys aren't having to read through million page documents of our responses. I know our responses are pretty hefty. And if I
Mhm.
had to read through it all, it would be a headache. And plus, who knows how many responses you're getting? Maybe sometimes 20 at a time. I don't know, depending on the project. But AI can definitely help you read through all of that text. There
Yeah.
is some automation in which you can upload your documents to an AI bot and
Mhm.
tell it which things you want to look at, and it will pull it out for you, so that you're not having to flip through sometimes a
Mhm.
50-page response.
Yeah.
So AI can be used to automate that process of, you know, scoring proposals.
Mhm.
I think that's a great use
Yeah.
of AI.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have thoughts, Lex, on that? I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if
would
you.
say that really helps. You know, you could say checklist of who turned in the required forms. If they didn't, okay, eliminate it. You know, it helps you narrow it down and really
Yep.
pull out the parts. You know, what makes this firm unique? What do they have that other firms don't? Things like
Yep.
that. AI could definitely be helpful to procurement professional and not having to read, you know, 80-page responses and scoring manually and all that. I think it could really pull out. And you could see, you know, you could bring it up on the screen, 5 different things. What makes this unique and why should we pick them, and compare that. I think that would
Yep.
be really helpful.
Absolutely. You know, we use it to read through solicitation
Mhm.
documents, you know, similar to the control find function.
Yes.
You know, we have 10 things that we want to make sure that we notate, and it will pull that out of the document
Mhm.
for us, so that we're not having to, you know, read through
Yeah.
again an 100-page document. But it works very similar to the control F function in any
Yeah.
PDF format.
Mhm.
But I agree. Maybe we need to get Clay on and us go live on this topic
Yeah.
with AI. It's a very hot topic.
Mhm.
Um, all right, transitioning from AI, I'm going back to the questions that we were asked. How important are pre-bid meetings and the ability to ask questions? I think we've harped on this enough. Uh, it's extremely important, again, because
Extremely.
we want to make sure that we understand what you're asking for, because
Mhm.
sometimes it is in procurement language and we
Yeah.
don't know what you're wanting.
Yeah.
And what that affects is our resource allocation and our budget number. If we don't understand what you're asking for, then you're at risk of scope creep, you're at risk of change orders, because if you contract with us and we get in the project and you say, oh, well, in the RFP, we wanted business process mapping, but it wasn't spelled out, then guess what? Your budget is about to increase by thousands, right? So those Q&A, those open question and answer sessions, the pre-bid meetings, they are very key in helping us to understand what you guys are looking for. Not meeting with your shortlist candidates in person is actually insane. It really is. It really, sometimes I have to beg and they're like, no, we can't do it in person. And it's like, what? And so I'm really, my personality really shines through on Zoom. So anyway, it gets interesting. Tyler, actually, we were on a shortlist interview a while back and we were presenting and I thought it was going well. And all of a sudden I look up and there is someone in their chair with their head just shoot it out. And so it was just a very awkward moment for everyone involved. You know, I know how Zoom meetings go. You know, it's easy to gloss over if you don't make them interesting. And a lot of this stuff is boring and hard to comprehend. So you really do have to showcase, you have to go overboard on Zoom and showcasing who you are. But anyway, Lexi, any more thoughts on pre-bid meeting and not having a cone of silence, like you like to say?
I would just say keep the communication channels open. Like, obviously, if an entity asks you what's your budget for the project, you may not be allowed to reveal that. You know, there's going to be cases like that where you can't really answer their questions. But having some form of communication is just going to lead you to better responses. We get to learn more about the entity. We get to learn more about what you're looking for, what makes you unique. Just really having that open communication is good. And if you're going to have a pre-bid meeting, make it productive, not just to simply go over the RFP and check a box. At that point, we've all looked at the RFP. Let's get into more details about why this is important and how you connect to this project, and why your entity is unique in this form.
One of the things that did come up, you just mentioned it, is, you know, a lot of organizations, specifically in the state of Tennessee, do not want you to see their budget, their operating budget. And so the question was posed to us, you know, do you look at budgets and what do you gain from looking at budgets? And then it was posed to the procurement teams who were joining, you know, do you allow your budget to be public? And so this was an open conversation. And Lexi, do you want to share a little bit more about what was uncovered during that conversation?
So I would say, you know, across the board, 90% of entities do not release their budget. They don't want to. They could very well have a budget for it, but they're not releasing that. They want competitive responses, things like that. However, I would say, you know, and us and another company said this, you know, we're not just because you release a budget doesn't mean we're going to play to the budget. We have done multiple responses recently where they've released their budget, and I say that's just simply not doable. It doesn't deter us from responding. We're still going to respond, and we're going to put the caveat. We understand your budget is XYZ, but for the amount of work this is going to involve, here is what we propose. We're not, you know, at the end of the day, we can't do a project at $20,000 just because that's your budget when it's truly a, you know, $200,000 project. That's just how it is, and we will explain why we are happy to do that.
Exactly. It gives us insight into what you understand about what you want, right? We don't play to the budget, but it is good insight so that we can craft a response that's unique to you and let you know that I don't care which consulting firm you go with, right? It's not going to be $20K, right? It's going to be more about $200K. But if you wanted to do it this way, right, you might eliminate some of those costs in the future. Speaking of, before we wrap up, one of the other topics that we haven't really touched on a whole lot when Lexi and I have gone live or on our YouTube channel is opportunity costs. So I'm going to reference Mr. Terry McKee again because he had great insight into this. He was speaking on behalf of vendors and saying, you know, there's huge opportunity costs in these vendors going after these responses. So Lexi, can you touch on that? just a little bit in terms of what Terry brought up?
Yeah. And some companies threw out an exact number of what they have calculated their cost to be to put a proposal together. We have one of those in mind too. It varies by proposal. But even if there isn't a cost, which really there always is a monetary cost because you're paying an employee to work on this for X amount
That's
of
right.
hours.
Time is money.
Yeah, time is money. But it's an opportunity cost as well that they could be chasing another opportunity, and one that's perhaps easier or one that they could perhaps close in a day, depending on the industry. But they're choosing to focus on you, so that's an opportunity right there. So there is always a monetary cost for doing business and responding to proposals, but also an opportunity cost. We are choosing to go after your opportunity and not spend that time on other opportunities.
On other opportunities. Yes, exactly. And we are very selective in the opportunities that we go after. And I just want to reiterate, there is no back burner here. We do not put the responses that we intend to go after on the back burner ever. We're very selective, but if something comes up in the process where we uncover, that there's another 50 forms that need to be filled, or if the date changes to, 2 days as opposed to 2 weeks, or if there are very strict and stringent MBE, DBE requirements that we can't fulfill, we're going to eliminate that RFP over something that we feel do not have as many requirements and we have more of an opportunity to win. So opportunity cost is a huge one. And we do put a lot of time and a lot of effort and money and employees into these responses. So they're very important to us, and never do they ever go on the back burner. So with that being said, I will wrap us up today. Lexi, thank you for your time. East Tennessee Purchasing Association, thank you so much again for allowing us to be on your panel today. Obviously, this is something that Lexi and I are extremely passionate about. We're here to help you and to help guide you and to give our advice on how to receive better RFP responses. We are active on all social media platforms. We go live every Wednesday at 10 or 11 a.m. depending on what we're doing that day. But I hope everyone has a safe and blessed holiday season. Lexi, thank you again. Thank you to our attendees today. If you have commented and asked a question, we will make sure that we get back to all of your questions if we missed anyone. But again, shout out to Terry McKee. Thank you so much, so much for having us on today. And thank you all for your time. Make sure you scan our QR code and download our 2025 report. And make sure you look for our recording. We will have a recording from today's session, but also from the ETPA panel discussion. So we'll make sure to blast that out to you all as well. But without further ado, thank you guys and have a great day. Thanks.